This is the Analysis in Change with Nathan Williams and Neal Kieran.
Hey everybody, Nathan here. How you doing, Neal?
I'm doing good, Nathan. Doing good. Yourself? How's life over in Germany? Getting ready for the holidays?
Yeah, getting ready for the holidays. All excited. We got presents under the tree, and I'm going to all the Christmas parties. It's been fun. Do you have any snow there in Montreal?
Oh yeah, it's intense. It's cold. I don't want to do anything except stay in bed. Um, Counting down the days to work holidays, so I don't have to leave the house anymore. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you have lots of crypto parties to go to over the holiday period with all your new buddies. I'm sure you've been invited to a lot of parties now that you're a celebrity.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of crypto events going on here in Berlin. We had our own started the other day. That was a lot of fun. We can talk about that a little later. I'll give you the update of how it went. First, have you been checking the crypto price recently? Things seem to be going through the roof.
Yeah, it's really intense. Bitcoin just hit an all-time high today. It hit 1,900 US dollars per Bitcoin, which is, quite significant because
Wait, stop, what? 1,900?
1,900. Yeah.
19,000.
19,000. Yes. 19,000. Sorry, did I get the numbers the wrong?
You said 1,900.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people just had a heart attack right now. They're like, what? I just
buy on the dip. 19,000. What was it? 19,900?
Yeah, no, 19,000. 19,000.
19,000. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to everyone there with a weak heart. So yeah, this is quite significant because this is the first all-time high in, I think, since a week and a half ago.
Wow, it's like ages.
I know. Exactly, because this is the weird thing, is that we're so used to all-time highs every 2 or 3 days that when it doesn't happen for like 24 hours, you start to get a bit nervous. But one thing we're starting to see here, there's a bit of a pattern emerging. And like in the past, I'm sure many listeners were kind of tired of me being negative on Bitcoin because I really did think I really struggled to understand why it was going up, and I was very concerned about the momentum it had. But it's becoming a lot more evident that we just have more people piling in. It's not a case of people being just speculative, but we have so many new people coming into the market, and these new people are using services like Coinbase, and you can see that looking at the GDAX market movement. So you can see that they're really pushing up the Bitcoin price. But while they push up the Bitcoin price, we tend to have this period where it dips a little over a period of a few days to a week. And with that, we see a lot of the other cryptocurrencies shoot up. So what we've seen is that other cryptocurrencies have gone up nearly 66%, I think, in the last 2 weeks, which is really, really intense. And that's why Bitcoin hasn't gone anywhere in the last week. So what I imagine will happen now is that since we've hit this new all-time high, the hype will continue again. Maybe Bitcoin will go up to maybe 2,200, 22,000, or even 25,000. And then we'll see that the other cryptocurrency altcoin boom happen again. So it seems to be this cycle, but it's all coming from new entrants. Everyone, like I've been contacted more and more by friends and family looking to get in. And, this just keeps the hype bubble going, and it's very hard to see what could derail it. This seems to be the way it's going now for the next few weeks at least.
I mean, we've talked about this before, about the fact that the market hasn't stabilized with the number of actors in play. And it's really true. The more that time passes, the more we see this same effect in motion. 100,000 people today, 100,000 people join tomorrow. And the Bitcoin market is very illiquid. There's not a lot that's available. A lot of people have their Bitcoins frozen. As many people have lost their Bitcoins because they didn't bother keeping them back when they were worth 2 cents each. And now when everyone's coming in, there's not tons of Bitcoin that's on the market. And so the price just goes right through the roof. You don't have designated market makers. They're ready to provide Bitcoin whenever you're ready to sell.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because when I was moving my crypto out of Bittrex, I had to go through a verification process, and this is as far as not only through Bittrex. I was moving some crypto out of KuCoin, which is another marketplace, and it was very, very simple. I didn't need to go through much of a verification process. But when I was going through Bittrex verification, it was quite stressful, because I read all these horror stories of people who could not get verified. There was some issue with it, and they just realized they were in a country where they were not allowed to move crypto. And so you had all of these people who had crypto, like Bitcoin or whatever, just stuck on their account in Bittrex. And again, this kind of adds to the issue of scarcity. And then when you have scarcity and you have these network effects where a friend tells a friend and they tell another friend, yeah, of course you're going to have this exponential boom that looks like Bitcoin's going to the moon. But it's but this is unsustainable. Something cannot go up like 100% every single day. But this is where we're at today, and yeah, I'm very curious how it will end. Will it plateau, or will it just have a vertical drop? It's so hard to tell, and all we can do is speculate.
I think it was Vitalik last week was commenting on the enormous boom in price of most crypto and saying, did we really create 10 times the value or $10 billion in value overnight? Like, how much value, additional value, was created? And the reality is none. None was created, but the demand hasn't stabilized. And until we see the demand stabilize, people are going to try and guess what the crypto price is going to do. They're going to try and see an upward trend or a downward trend, but it's really impossible to predict. The traditional technical analysis doesn't work for the stock market, but people still do it. It works even less with crypto because there is no trend to analyze. These are not random forces that are blowing the crypto price up and down like the wind that we can go, okay, well, it goes in waves. And no, it's completely at the mercy of people coming in, of technical failures, of people manipulating the market, of people who are in the know selling, the whales selling their Bitcoins or buying up the Bitcoins. And none of that is within sort of prediction control.
Yeah, there's so many elements that are difficult to understand what's really happening. So in the stock market, if a whale, you could say like a big hedge fund, were to make a position, like go long in a certain stock, they must notify the SEC, and this becomes public information so people can understand when significant players make significant moves. But we do not know this. And how can we differentiate between a whale making a position or another, say, 100,000 people coming in to the crypto space? Because if it wasn't for Coinbase letting us know of these 100,000 users, then we wouldn't really know what's really happening. And just to go back to your point on Vitalik, and I really love that tweet that he did put out, how the value had increased by so much, and he really questioned the value, like had this really been created, and nothing was created in terms of improving people's lives. And that was one of the main things he wanted to highlight, because we don't have many merchants creating business out of crypto. I think CryptoKitties is probably the most successful decentralized product that's actually out there. We've all of these other entrepreneurs, they're not at this maturity stage yet. We're just very, very overvalued based on success in 10 years' time. And I think this is like the big issue, and this is why people get very nervous, because like something could go wrong between now and 10 years' time, and then the value could just easily disappear. And yeah, it's a very, very risky market. I can understand why people are so excited, because it is an exciting time. But is it really worth this much money?
You know what worries me more than uncertainty in market forces or random events is the whales themselves. Now, I think it was last week I think it was the 8th of December, I was reading an article by Bloomberg about Bitcoin whales. They said that there's about 1,000 people who own 40% of the market, the entire Bitcoin market. They mentioned, there was on November 12th, someone moved 25,000 Bitcoins. So it's,
Wow.
just to an online exchange. I mean, that's the sort of thing that really sends a shockwave through the entire price. I mean, imagine someone did that with any standard publicly traded stock. It would, if it wasn't announced and done in a proper way, it would completely destabilize the market. And that's why you have insider trading rules. But you don't have that in Bitcoin. I mean, who's an insider? Who the only people in the stock market that would own that much are insiders, but that's not the case. These are, just people that own massive amounts of Bitcoin. And it's important to keep in mind that that these whales exist when you're taking that risk of going and buying Bitcoin. And I am sure that most Bitcoin whales are, from the early days of Bitcoin. Probably they are sitting there with their Bitcoin, with this hodling mentality. They believe in the system, or maybe some of them are mining companies, and they have a vested interest in keeping the Bitcoin price stable and high. But the reality is, the rest of the market is sort of sensitive to their movements.
And I think one of the best way to compensate that is if the likes of Coinbase and these other gateway markets, you have more currencies available for people to exchange fiat to. Because if you go into Coinbase and you can only choose from Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, well, you kind of feel like you're kind of late to the game to those particular cryptocurrencies. It's like, okay, I have no choice but to go to Bitcoin, and I have no interest in going through the hassle of opening up Bittrex or another account to do the whole conversion. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, what, I'd rather invest in a new crypto coin because I can buy up a lot of those coins, and then in 5 years' time, it will have gone up 1,000, 2,000, or even 10,000%. And I think that this is maybe something that could affect people's support of Bitcoin, is that they may feel that they're late to the game. And this is what a lot of people say to me is like, "Ugh, I'm probably too late to Bitcoin. What's the point? Or Ethereum, it's up so high. Why bother?"
I got to confess, I've been thinking along those lines.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel I'm late to the game. I feel like if I had invested 10 grand in Bitcoin when I got started at the beginning of the year in cryptocurrency, I wouldn't have to fundraise for my startup right now.
Yeah, yeah, and so I feel that Coinbase do have a responsibility to expand their offering in terms of what other cryptos out there. Hey, and I think this kind of expands into other story we've seen where BitPay announced that from, I think it was yesterday, they will now start accepting Bitcoin Cash and will plan to start using other crypto currencies that have a blockchain. Because everyone is trying out different cryptocurrencies, everyone's trying to figure out which is the de facto internet payment system, which is the crypto asset that we would speculate in the stock market. Because of all this choice, I think that Coinbase have a responsibility to offer people choice. So they're not at the mercy of Bitcoin and whales, that they can say, okay, I want to go with this new cryptocurrency because I like it and it's new and I have an opportunity to do well as an investment. Bitcoin will actually could go flat because it's like, you know what, buddy, there's no point because it's so high. The return, every $1,000 it goes up is actually less of a return for you. And so I think that, this could actually suppress the Bitcoin price and could actually be a threat.
You notice how we've changed our way we talk about Bitcoin on the show now, like from 4 months ago when we talked about it as needing to stabilize and needing to be a stable currency to, oh my gosh, it's going to stabilize.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's hard to know if stabilization in 2018 is a threat or a good thing, given that the hype is so intense. You could drop from 100,000 people signing up on Coinbase, and it could drop down to 20,000 people.
I'm constantly asked, how do you find altcoins? What are the interesting altcoins you're invested in? And it's kind of embarrassing. I got this podcast. I'm not invested in any right now. We had a conversation about this on our Slack group of, how do you find how do you determine if an ICO, if a token sale, if an altcoin is a good project, or if it's a scam, or if it's meaning to be a good project but doesn't have good fundamentals, and so you should just avoid it. And it was interesting. Some people had different ways of evaluating. My favorite was one of our listeners. He likes to read through the white paper and looks at the percentage of stuff that they've said that they would achieve versus the percentage of stuff they've actually achieved. And if that percentage is low, then he's more and more skeptical. And his code name is Jono, so he calls it the Jono percentage. And I really like that name. I like named statistics.
Well, I think Jono has a good point in terms of how to evaluate a crypto, but at the same time, there's almost like an inverse relationship there, that the more you say you're going to do and the further you away are from it, potentially the more your price could go up. Because if you're promising the world, people are more excited about that. Even if you're very, very far away from it, the potential is so high. That means the return is very, very high. The less well you're doing in completing your goals, actually potentially the more hyped up you are and the better return of investment you are, which doesn't make sense, but that seems to be the way it's going.
This actually brings us back to something that came up during, I think it was the last interview with Martins Lieberts? I think it was with him. When we were talking about his ICO process and sort of, everyone says or thinks that it's an easy way to raise money, but actually it isn't. What you're talking about there is a messaging problem. It's a communications problem. And once you launch your ICO, in the months that follow it, you have to keep up the community and you have to communicate very effectively about what you're accomplishing, why it's adding value, why it's going to play in to the token being more used, and nurture that community. Otherwise, the token price will go dead. And I found that really interesting because normally you see these news articles about these companies that have done this massive ICO, massive token sale. They've raised hundreds or tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. And then you go, wow, they've got it made. And now they just have to go and develop and build their token. And that's just not what happens at all.
I noticed that a lot of the leaders of a lot of these blockchains or token companies spend a crazy amount of time communicating, reassuring people. I noticed on Twitter for a start is that a lot of these people, I wonder, okay, why are you spending this time on Twitter? You should be putting your time into development of the blockchain that you're currently supporting. How do you have this time to have all of these conversations in one day? Like for me, even just looking at Twitter takes up a lot of my time. I don't even.
Yeah, but wouldn't you expect the CEO of a Fortune 500 company to do the same? Like spend most of their time reassuring their investors and communicating?
I'm sure they have a team of people tweeting for them. It's very, very evident, judging by how emotional a lot of these leaders get on Twitter, that it's really them that's tweeting. And yeah, like I followed a few ICOs on Telegram, and you could tell that the CEO was on those telegrams a lot of the time, reassuring people how well the project was going, and you could tell, they were slowly breaking. Their souls were breaking because they were becoming this broken record of reassurance, and people were threatening to sell, and this is terrible, and you don't communicate enough. It's like people depend on constant hype to reassure their investment and also to have other people buying in. One guy I was particularly following, he kept saying, we actually have a product. We actually have something that's working. We're so far ahead of other people. But while he was saying that, the value of his tokens were actually dropping because there was no major goal out there to create the hype, to create the excitement. And this is where, as I said, there is an inverse relationship between achievement and hype or price.
I find it interesting that you would have sort of the opposite reaction that I would have from a CEO taking control of their own message. Personally, if it was just a marketing team communicating the hype or the new developments with me, I would be much more skeptical than the person who's actually holding the message and holding the vision of the company. I don't know.
Well,
I see the CEO's role, especially in a startup, that they need to move away from product quickly and move into messaging, visioning, and business development and making those the big new deals.
I would say yes and no. It's because in the blockchain world, there are so few technical leaders out there that, in my mind, these CEOs are so busy with the product team developing things that they have other people like maybe the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, crafting the message. Whereas when I see the CEO spend a crazy amount of time on Twitter or Telegram, I'm thinking, okay, buddy, who are you leading? It's just, again, I'm coming back from a more traditional world of, a lot of these, as you say, Fortune 500 companies and how they're managed. And, the CEOs tend to talk at conferences or at investor meetings or the quarterly reports every 3 months. And that's where I'm more used to hearing them and their thoughts. So whenever they speak, it's a special occasion. Whereas in the ICO world, it's almost like it's a Tuesday. And so it really goes to show how how inverted the whole ICO world is now. Whether this is sustainable, we don't know, but this is new territory. So we'll know, I guess, in 4 or 5 years' time if this is the right approach, because this is all new. This is, we're going to be reading books and reviews about the approaches that were developed during these times and what are the winning tactics.
I suppose there is a cultural difference with this blockchain startup culture. However, I do see your point that we've had issues in the past year or so with some leaders spending too much time on Twitter and not exactly instilling a feeling of confidence in the rest of the world. But nonetheless, nevertheless,
Speaking of that.
I want to before we leave off, I want to tell you how our event went, Neil.
Oh, dude, please.
Yeah, so we had our first live event. It was on last Thursday, and we're going to repeat it second Thursday of the month. And I found it super fun. We had about 20 people show up to this live event. We were at the Impact Hub, and it was just me and our cozy little crowd. Most people who signed up and who came were fairly new to blockchain. And it was neat for me to see what type of questions they had. What we did is basically I took about half an hour and went through how the Bitcoin blockchain worked, because most people really had no idea how the hashing algorithm worked, how proof of work operated, why it was secure, how you can store value. They knew that Bitcoin was like an electronic coin, but that was about it. And it was hard to explain, honestly. I got out my markers and we started drawing it. I think it left people with more questions than answers, but we ended up taking about 40 minutes after that and doing Q&A, and people had a lot of really, really good questions. But I think that really highlights to me, Neil, that there's a big need out there for going over the basics of how these cryptocurrencies operate, why they work, why they're in existence, and what people need to know, like when they're investing. Why is it different than the stock market? And so it was really encouraging to me to see, okay, we're sort of on the right track.
And if people ever want to have questions, by all means, tweet us, send us messages on Slack or however.
Absolutely. Join our Slack.
Yeah, I would. It'd be great.
Yeah. It was great. So we're going to repeat this. The 11th of January is going to be the next one. That one we're going to have a guest. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll interview the guest about his business and how he did things, but we're going to do very similar, where we're talking about the basics of how blockchain works, maybe some transparency issues, some social impact issues of how his thing and how blockchain in general can affect the world in a positive way. People can bring whatever questions they want, and again, we'll record it, and maybe we'll be able to put together a podcast episode. With this one, the audio came out well. I'm going to play a little clip from the event so you can hear how it went, but the audio wasn't quite good enough to do a full episode, but just enough to give everyone a teaser. How is this working? You've got thousands of computers basically voting on what is the correct version of transactions that happen.
Bitcoin, you don't need a central bank. That's real power.
You could store data, conditions, and logic, which will be executed at a certain point of time or per condition. And I think there is so much value and there's so much possibilities to develop business models on it, and that's way more worth thinking about that rather than the financial side.
Started with the currency. It started with a group of people that didn't trust the government and didn't trust the central banks, and they wanted a way of getting out of the system.
2,000 years ago, some kings had the idea to take some gold and some silver and to print their ugly face on it and say, this is money, now you can trade with this. And now we are in the very last stage of digitalized new money. That's all about it, so let's jump into it.
And with that, how are your CryptoKitties doing?
They're still alive. We haven't traded any yet. I imagine they've actually gone up in value because Ethereum went up in value a lot since we started playing. But we're playing some strategy where we're told, we did some research and we were told that the longer you wait, the more valuable they become. So we'll see. We'll see if this strategy will work. We'll do some trading tomorrow. But stay tuned. We'll let you know more the more we learn.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We will get back to you again on Thursday with an interview that we've got with Matthias Grobe from the Investment Bank of Berlin. And it'll be interesting to get his take on everything that's going on in the blockchain world. And until then, you can feel free to visit us at www.analysisinchains.com, sign up for our Slack, and until next time, keep on hashing.
Thank you.